afternoon, folks. This is David Brown, just north of Houston, on this Saturday, May the 7th, 2016. Today, we'll be conducting our second interview with the outstanding author and researcher, Mr. Joe Plummer. Mr. Plummer has done some outstanding historical research and has written several fascinating books, including Tragedy and Hope 101, Dirty Money, and a chilling novel on one man's journey called Leaving the Illusion. Mr. Plummer has also appeared on Alex Jones's InfoWars, Richard Grove's Tragedy and Hope, James Corbett's The Corbett Report, and John B. Wells' Caravan to Midnight, and of course on Clear Info. So with that, I'd like to see if we could get Joe to give us a slight introduction. It's been a little bit over a year since we last talked, so I wanted to kind of catch up with you and find out what's transpired since that time, and then we'll get into the topics we're going to discuss today. So,
all right. Well, first I want to address Dirty Money. I like that. It's not the name of my book, but that is a good name. It's dishonest money, but I like Dirty Money.
Let me see. That's what it's on my.
I mean, is that a Freudian slip?
Yeah.
It's about right. It's accurate.
No, that's good.
So anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
Dirty money, dishonest money, it's all the same.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't believe it's been a year already, David. I mean, it's amazing how time fast goes. I think the last time I spoke to you, I was at the tail end of trying to convince myself that I was going to take a break from all this stuff for a while. I believe I said that in the interview. You know, I was kind of burned out, and I'd spent however long, you know, at that point it was already over a decade, you know, immersed in all this through the research and the writing. And I was still trying to convince myself that I was going to try to take a break and go do something else, but I gave up on that probably about 6 months ago. I realized, you know, there really isn't anything else I'd rather be doing, so I'm just going to keep pushing forward here. I put all that time and effort into the research and the writing. Now I'm focusing on doing everything I can to get the word out, and it's you know, it's doing pretty well, so I'm happy with that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've watched your career the short time I've known you, and I'm just amazed. I mean, you know, to be able to get on to, you know, Richard Grove's show, I mean, he is really one of the premier intellectuals, and then also the top alternative media side, in my opinion, is James Corbett, and so you've really hit the big points there. So my hat's off to you. But you know, underlying all that, you know, I've read all of your books, and you know, what I can testify to is that they're very, you know, detailed, to the point, and they're fully backed up with factual documentation. So, I mean, as long as you have that in your quiver, I mean, there's nothing to stop, you know, what you're doing. And my hat's off to you. And I feel very honored to, you know, call you a friend and have you, you know, consent to doing these interviews. So, you might tell us, I mean, you had one of your books was translated into German and into Deutsch. And then you have another one you're looking at maybe doing crowdfunding to get it translated into Spanish, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah,
So,
breaking news, actually. Tragedy and Hope 101 is also being translated into German. So, Dishonest Money, I signed that deal with Kopp Verlag, and they did a German version of it, and then they came back and they wanted Tragedy and Hope 101, so I just signed that.
awesome.
About a month ago. So, well, I signed it before that, but they, you know, they finished all the paperwork and everything's set to go there. I'm really excited about doing the Spanish version, though. See, the problem is, like, if I sign a contract with somebody to do like a German version, like I did with Kopp Verlag, they're not going to let me post a free version of it online. Whereas if I actually do the translation myself, I can provide it for free, just like I do you know, I have free versions of Dishonest Money, Tragedy and Hope 101, and Leaving the Illusion. They're all available in English for free.
Right.
And it's kind of nice because people can use like Google Translate to try to get the basic idea, but it's not as good as if I have somebody professionally translate into another language. So I'm working on that now. I got the first chapter back from a guy that I found very affordable. You know, realistically right now it's looking like I could maybe get it done for the initial translation, not the hard copy and not the Kindle version and not the formatting and not the cover work and all that, but let's just say that probably for about $1,000, I can hopefully get.
That's
I can get a
incredible.
decent. Yeah, I can get a decent HTML version. So I'm pretty happy about that. Now I can't read Spanish, and I'm not Spanish, so I've looked at it. It looks beautiful, but I got to have somebody else kind of go over it and tell me whether or not everything translates properly. But he did the formatting perfectly, so it perfectly matches the formatting of the English version. The footnotes and everything is laid out properly, so it looks great. I'm excited to do that because I've had a lot of people ask about a Spanish version of all the translations that could be possible. I've only had people write me and ask me, do you have a Spanish version? It's one of the most common languages on the planet. So
Absolutely.
I guess that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I think that's a brilliant move on your part. To get the word out, and really that is part of your overall goal, because you've taken some of these monstrous books, 1,300 pages here, 800 pages there, and you've kind of distilled them down to something that's understandable and tractable to a lot of the average folks. And I wouldn't say that your books are like a slimmed down version, really, because they contain so much more background and detail, really, and of course, and they're more with the common era information that we're familiar with too, because some of these books are pretty old, like 66 for Quigley's Tragedy and Hope. So a lot has happened since then. So your book does not only tragedy and hope, it adds a lot to it, I believe.
Right, and sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
If you add too much complexity, there's a point of diminishing returns. So that's really the whole purpose of writing Tragedy and Hope 101, was just to introduce people to Carroll Quigley's work in a very readable, concise way, and expose them to the importance of what he brought forward in a way that anybody can easily go through and comprehend. And then if they want additional information, then it's heavily footnoted and referenced, and they can go through the process of digging as deep as they want, up to and including reading the entire book.
Right. And, along that line, a couple of things come to my mind. And one is, I had this most amazing experience at the Toyota repair shop, authorized dealer I had my car in. And I was sitting there, waiting for 2 hours for my car, and there's this young, nice-looking man with wife and kids, very, clean-cut, looked intelligent, and we got into talking about Quigley and some of this. And, what I'm used to doing on Facebook or other venues is getting into a debate and, this and that, and it's always kind of this intellectual, these are these facts and this sort of thing. But the thing that surprised me about this young man is it's like he was starving for this information. He did not confront me or try to debate me. He said, where can I find more information? This was all brand new to him. And what that taught me is that, guys like, you and me and others, we study this and read it all the time, and it's like old hat. And we don't want it to become old hat, because there's a lot of people out there that have no clue what we're talking about.
You're so right, David. I mean, what percentage of the population has heard of Carroll Quigley?
Right.
Seriously, it's a tiny, tiny percent. And his work is so incredibly important. What percentage should have heard of Carroll Quigley?
Everybody.
Ideally, it would be everybody has heard of Carroll. I mean, how many people have heard of Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Compared to how many people have heard of Carroll Quigley? Well, Carroll Quigley his work is, as far as I'm concerned, after years and years and years of researching all of this stuff, it is probably one of the best resources for convincing people, convincing them about the reality versus the illusion of the system. Because this is a guy who's very well-credentialed Ivy League historian that actually studied the way governments operate and was very close to instruments of power throughout his whole career. And he spent decades, he wrote Anglo-American Establishment prior to Tragedy and Hope. So the Anglo-American establishment is very specifically about the nature of secret power and how it manipulates policy from behind the scenes and is unaccountable and is responsible for all of these horrible things in history. That's important. People need to understand this stuff. They totally, absolutely have a right to know that, according to Carol Quigley, not only does this system exist in a secretive way, it was created specifically to convince people otherwise. It was created to convince them that they live in a representative government that they have a hand in, when they don't. So, not a meaningful influence anyway, compared to these insiders. So, yeah, I just can't. I really can't think of a better place for people to start than with his work and with what he exposed, and that's why I wrote it. It provides the intellectual framework for them to then get their mind around all these other really disturbing facts of our current reality and the people who have the greatest hand in shaping it.
Yep. Excuse me. I couldn't agree more. I guess the thing about Quigley, and I always found it kind of weird that a lot of the people that have read Quigley, they say that the Anglo-American establishment is very difficult. And, you know, I'm not bragging. I have nothing to brag about, but I found it very easy to read and to understand. It's a little tedious because there's so much detail. And
that's what it is, David. That's all it is. Okay, so you got to understand that different people process information differently, and some people really enjoy getting into the minutia and all of the dates and all of the names and all of the places. That doesn't bother them at all. Even regardless of, I mean, you have to be Rain Man to retain all of it.
Right.
I don't know that anybody's going to actually retain all of it, but some people, I think most people really, are looking more for what does it mean? What does it mean? And they get bogged down. Maybe it's part of the schooling, you know, part of something that happens in schooling where they feel they have to remember all of this stuff, and it takes away their capacity to kind of say, okay, well, no, I don't really have to remember all of these names and all of these dates and all of these relationships. I just have to derive the meaning from it. They'd be able to loosen up a little bit and get through it if they approached it that way. Maybe some people, like yourself, and I guess to a degree, I do this. Obviously, I'm perfectly willing to read these kinds of things because I know I have to read them to get the information that I want out, so I'm going to read it. But other people just won't. They get tired and it just bogs them down, I think.
right.
So, yeah, I think it really is. But you can't explain that to somebody who's a professor like Carol Quigley. He clearly processes information that way, and he clearly likes to present information in that way. But there is definitely a disconnect between the writing of somebody like Carol Quigley that maybe you and I can read and take the valuable information from, and somebody else who is just who maybe wants more of a condensed version of it. Okay, yeah, I understand, and trust me, even for me, reading some of those pages where he's going through all of the names and associations and titles that these people held, I got a little it isn't that it was difficult. I just was like, okay, do I really need all of this right this minute?
Right.
You know, how does this? And if it's like one presentation after another presentation, so you get pages and pages and pages of all of these new names, all of these new dates, all of these new associations, all of these new titles, only to be followed by another page of the same thing and another page of at some point, like you said, I think that can get tedious.
Right.
When really what we're looking for here is who are the main players in this network, and how powerful are they, and how do they function, and how have they created the illusion of representative government and convinced so many people, and what are some of their primary instruments? You know, the Federal Reserve System is a perfect example, the CIA, the NSA, all of these things that were born out of this network and their work. I think if we want to reach the average person, we got to focus on that stuff.
Right. And, you know, but I think, and I skipped over, you know, to me it reminded me of reading Numbers in the Bible where you had all the begotten, you know, so-and-so begot this person and that person, you know. And after a while your brain becomes numb. And so Quigley was doing some of that. But, you know, to me the benefit of that is after the fact you have serious researchers that can go in there and tie everything together. You
Sure.
know, and so it's like for the record, right?
Absolutely. I agree 100% that it has value, but in its current form, it won't reach the masses, is what I'm basically
Right.
my point is. Like Tragedy and Hope is a perfect example. Tragedy and Hope is a massive resource, but in its current form, it's never, the real meaning and the real value of what he's exposing is not going to reach the masses. I don't believe it is. So if I did, I guess I wouldn't have taken the time to write the condensed version of it.
Right.
I don't know. Do you agree? Do you agree?
I totally
average
agree.
person is not going to sit down and read that book. I mean, they're just.
I don't think, you know, it would be interesting to find out the percentage of people that would. I mean,
Yeah,
it's going to be a
small.
very small fraction of 1%.
I agree.
So whatever that is, very infinitesimal.
Yeah.
You know, but to me, you know, thinking about, you know, the massive amount of data that's out there, and it's all in front of us to, you know, if we want to take the time to look at it. But you have one of these aha experiences. It's kind of like you finally learn how to ride a bicycle, or, you know, for me, I used to teach diesel mechanics and this sort of thing. So, you know, it's when you first understand an internal combustion engine, how it works, and it's beautiful. You know, it's one of these aha experiences. And so from reading Quigley, what happened to me was that all of a sudden, you know, all of these people that say, well, how can you have a conspiracy when so many people know about it? Somebody would say something about it. You know, you have all these people dissing the conspiracy theory of history. But then when you see Quigley, he ties it all together, and it's like your brain clicks in, and it's like you come out of the Matrix. You know,
Right.
the Matrix is a good analogy to this.
Yeah.
And you can see what's behind the walls and all the lies. And then you start reading other people, Anthony C. Sutton and many others, and you know, it's all been a lie. Everything you and I have been taught in school just about virtually is a lie. You know?
Absolutely, and intentionally, of course it's a lie. That was their whole purpose from day one, is that they wanted to control the educational and opinion-forming agencies. That's how they were going to conceal their power. So
Right.
that's how they did it. So when somebody asks, "Oh, how would they do it?" That's how they would do it. In fact,
Yeah, read Quigley, and he, you know, it's a cookbook. This is exactly rings within rings, etc.
that's
You know.
how they did it.
Anyway, let's start a new topic right now, and let's talk about a little bit about the 2016 presidential contest, and see if you have any insider input into that. I don't want to get you to commit to endorsing anybody or anything like that, but if you'd like to talk a little bit about your take on the presidential contest and what you see.
For me, the most valuable part of it was watching the establishment of both parties do everything they could so for instance, the establishment on the Democratic side doing absolutely everything they can do to play every dirty game that they've got at their disposal to make sure Hillary Clinton, which is the establishment candidate obviously, to make sure that she would win, and that how, like what we went through, I assume you were a Ron Paul supporter, I don't know, but
Yeah.
what the Ron Paul supporters went through in 2008 and 2012, now this whole new segment of society, and arguably a far larger segment of society, got to see exactly how that works and how corrupt and just shamelessly corrupt these people are with regard to making sure that they win. As far as they're concerned, they win. They really don't care what the electorate truly wants. They will do whatever they can to undermine a candidate that threatens the candidate that they or they'll do everything they can to undermine. Yeah, they'll do everything they can to undermine a candidate that's challenging the candidate that they want to win. And of course, the same thing was happening with Donald Trump. That on the GOP side, just that they were pulling out all the stops and talking about all these ways that they were going to try to block him from becoming the nominee, brokered convention, the whole 9 yards. And I just think that that was really valuable for people to see that. I guess we'll have to wait and see what they do at this point, now that apparently Trump is going to, I mean, have they decided that at this point he's going to get the proper number of delegates that he needs?
The last number I heard, you need 1237,
Yeah.
and he's supposed to get 1400.
Oh, wow.
Is what I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not.
All right.
But what I'm hearing also though is they're still going to try to take it away from him. I mean,
see,
they
that's
haven't
the
given
thing.
up.
I truly believe that that the establishment would rather Hillary Clinton win.
Oh, yeah, they're on record, a lot of them. A lot of Republicans are on record saying they'd rather have Hillary.
Of course, because she's not going to threaten the establishment.
Right.
So that's that's valuable. All of this is valuable to me. I'll tell you, Trump, to me, let me tell you what would be really interesting. If Trump, they're already talking about Hillary potentially choosing Bernie Sanders as the VP. And Bernie supposedly, I didn't read the article, but I saw the headline, so I don't know, they could have been twisting the facts, but that Bernie is potentially open to being the VP. It's a smart move, I think.
Yeah.
All right. But can you imagine if Trump chose Ron Paul as his vice president? How interesting that would be at that point. That would probably be about the only thing that would really excite me about it, because I really haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it. One of the main things about Trump that really bothered me was his take on Edward Snowden, where he's saying hang the traitor and all this. That disconnect between him supposedly being anti-establishment and being pro-America, meaning the principles enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights and all of this, the idea that he considers Snowden a traitor who should die, it was a major gap in between, like, the message, the other parts of his message that are supposedly good. But I'll be honest, I haven't looked really, really carefully. That really disturbed me, because as far as I'm concerned, clearly, you can't be a traitor when you're exposing traitors.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I have a problem with that. So,
Trump's made, several major gaffes in a way that, indicate to me ignorance, but who knows what the real game is. I mean, it's like the iPhone situation where the FBI was trying to get them to rejigger their operating system so they could, have easy access. And, Trump was on the side of the FBI in that regard, and that's anti-Fourth Amendment, anti-privacy, etc. I mean, it's very, very tyrannical.
right.
So there's a couple of bad things from Trump.
Sure, and keep in mind, though, he's saying he's really going to look into 9/11 and things like that. So that would be...
Well, the thing that surprised me was NATO. I mean, he's anti-NATO. And from my studies, I mean, that is one of the most evil, bloodthirsty killing machines on the planet. I mean, they have just slaughtered so many people. And everybody, thinks they're like this good, military arm of the 28 member states, of NATO. And it is so evil. And all we have to do is look at, Operation Gladio, for example. But that's, it's horrible that we're sitting there supporting NATO in the Ukraine and all the other places that they're involved in all over the world, and the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that are being slaughtered.
They're part of the network's sovereignty destruction project, an instrument of the sovereignty destruction project. It's that simple. That's what they're there to do.
So anyway, on Trump, I did an analysis and I put it on Clear Info on his different positions, and I mapped it into some of the things that the New World Order, the network, whatever we want to call these folks. Mm-hmm. But I mapped it in there, and he's pretty consistently on the right side, anti-New World Order. But I do think he has some blind spots, or maybe he's totally ignorant. Maybe he really believes that. about Snowden. Now, there are several layers to Snowden, and I don't know how far you've dug into it, but he's got some problems with me.
Okay.
Okay. And, if you look at the relationship between him and Glenn Greenwald and Pierre Audemar, those are some very serious issues that Snowden has. And if you look at the number of documents he's released, it's been a very, very minuscule percentage of the total documents he has.
And so Greenwald has only released a small number.
Yeah, let's not say Snowden,
Yep.
Greenwald.
Yeah.
And they're making money off of it. And you look at Pierre Audemar, and he's with George Soros. Both of those guys have been funding the color revolution over there in the Ukraine together. I mean, we have actual copies of documents where they funded some of the activities over there in the Ukraine. Of course, George Soros is on record bragging about it. Mm-hmm. And so they're over there helping the CIA in the Ukraine, trying to destabilize, stir up that civil war over there. And
have you ever wondered if this is like infighting among intelligence agents or intelligence agencies even?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's something going on there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I feel that Snowden is certainly way more valuable than if he had not come out and released what he released. He pretty much verified all of the stuff that the crazy conspiracy theorists said were going on for years and years and years. He came out and really put an exclamation point on it and underlined it and said, yes, this is how they're operating. These are the things they're doing. He certainly hasn't given us all the information, though.
Well, but we're kind of being duped. Okay, the further you dig into this and peel back the onion, and I love Snowden, and when he speaks, it's like manna from heaven or whatever. It's beautiful what he says, but you got to back off and forget your own personal interest and do some objective observing before you make a decision, right? And we've had major whistleblowers out of the NSA and the CIA that have said the same or more than Snowden said, okay? And they got zero coverage, okay? So let's just assume that's a fact, okay?
Well, did they take the documents and, do you think that maybe Snowden's getting more because he actually stole all of this?
Yeah, I think, there you go. That's one facet of the stone there. Is that he actually got the documents. But at the same time, all this information that he's releasing had already been released by prior whistleblowers, okay? And so now we have all this media attention, and so the question is, why are we being played with Snowden?
Well, do you remember initially they tried to demonize him and it just didn't work? Yeah. Do you remember the initial push in the media was that he was a traitor and that he was a Russian spy and that he was trying to help the communists? I don't remember all the things they tried to tie him to. It was like initially they really tried to demonize him, and nobody was buying it. The comment section is about all you have to go by, and so you would see some like hit piece on him that, for all we know, maybe that's all Donald Trump read, was a hit piece that talked about what a traitor he was and how much danger he put the nation in and all that. Never really dug any deeper into it than that, but initially, there was a lot of that, and then it just stopped. And I felt the reason it stopped was because it was backfiring. All it was doing was raising awareness about him and what he revealed and getting people to dig more into it, and it was backfiring on him. But of course, I could be wrong. I really don't know. Glenn Greenwald seems legitimate to me. I don't doubt that he's making money, and I don't
Well, but let's trace the money back, because Pierre Audemar, owned PayPal, for example. That's where he's a billionaire.
Right, okay? He's a billionaire, and he funded The Intercept, right? Is that what it is?
$250 million.
Okay.
That's not chump change.
No, it's not.
And he handed that over to Glenn Greenwald to an extent, and so can you buy a compromise with $250 million? I don't know.
Well, okay, but what is the suggestion? Okay, because again, basically what I'm saying is whatever has been put out, I feel has been very useful. I'm glad that the information that Snowden put out is put out, and I I understand the limited hangout argument, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I don't see how, unless the suggestion is that there's more there and it's not going to be put out because of the funds that were put in there. So it's kind of like damage control. We're not gonna, for instance, leak information about 9/11. That would be a perfect example. Let's assume that information existed somewhere and it proved irrefutably that, as Pachenik said, it was a stand-down false flag operation. And there are generals within the U.S. government that are aware of this. I don't know if you ever saw an interview of Pachenik where he said specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I suppose maybe that would be, that would be a potential thing there where you come in and you make sure, okay, well, we can do this, this, and this, but we can't touch this because it's going to be too devastating and it's going to cause too much chaos, and who knows? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, I don't like ascribe to him some level of extraordinary value, but I do see that what he did was more valuable than a lot of stuff that's been going on, just because of the credibility it brought to the table. He stole all these documents, and they can't argue with him about it.
Right.
So like, for instance, when Clapper goes in front of the Senate and says that they're not mass collecting data and just flat out lies, Snowden brings forward documents that show he's flat out lying. They're mass collecting data, and then what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince you, okay, well, yeah, we are, but it's all safe. And then just the fact that Greenwald used that argument against him and said, okay, well, how safe is it if here you have Edward Snowden, who's sitting there for months downloading all of this data and stealing all of this data, and you still don't know what he took, and you have no idea how he did it. So your argument that first you lie, then after you lie, you say, okay, well, yeah, we're taking all this data, but it's all safely tucked away somewhere where nobody can get to it. Okay, well, that's a lie too. Because, Snowden, the guy that you're trying to demonize here, is proof positive that whatever system you have in place isn't very secure if somebody can sit there and steal all this data, not only steal it, not only get away with it, but then you don't even know what he took. You have no way of knowing what all information he has. So, I don't know. To me, I feel it was more useful. I haven't heard any really.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
I haven't heard really strong arguments against him, or that he's trying to do something. Like, a lot of times I'll see people, like I'll see an outlet that's establishment connected, that'll come out with a problem, and the problem always is followed by the logical solution. We need more government. The government needs more money. The government needs more power. So then you can see how they're using it. They'll point to a legitimate problem, but then the solution that they put forward clearly only empowers the establishment. So I see that regularly, and it disturbs me, because that's how they control people. They get them to be upset about the environment, and so then they funnel them into a solution that just further empowers the people who could care less about the environment, or polluting the environment more than anything, but they'll earn more money and gain more power from that solution. So that kind of stuff I see. I know that there have been people who I do trust who've been critical of Snowden or who question him at some level. I just haven't seen, for me, with regard to Greenwald and Snowden, and even the other guy, the PayPal guy, I just basically know that he put up the funding and that he supposedly has CIA. I say supposedly, I don't doubt that it's true. I just haven't looked into it myself.
Well, Pierre Audemar is Glenn Greenwald's boss.
Okay, and he is connected to the CIA.
He signs the check.
How is he connected?
Checks.
To the CIA?
Well, a couple of ways. He helped the CIA shut down WikiLeaks. Okay, for example.
That's interesting.
Okay, he helped fund the CIA's NGOs and operation over there in the Ukraine to destabilize the Ukraine. So he was in there with Soros, the CIA.
over in the Ukraine. So
Okay, let me ask you this.
that's two cases.
How did he shut down the CIA? How did he shut down WikiLeaks through his relationship with
Well,
PayPal?
that's a questionable. He was supposedly very eager and willing to close down all of their funding through PayPal.
Now, is that possibly something where he was being leaned on? Like, look.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. See, so it's not real clear.
That could be why he took lots of money and wanted to fund some other, who knows? Who knows? Really, all it boils down to is every piece of proof that we can find that backs up how illegitimate this system is, I'll take it, as long as it's reputable and as long as it isn't misinformation. And then, you have to do the best you can to try to figure that part of it out. But, yeah.
Well, if anybody's really interested in digging into this, I don't know if you're familiar with the owner-operator of Cryptome.org.
No.
But it's an amazing site, and CRYPTOM.org.
I think I've heard of it.
I think that the guy's name is, John Long. And I posted an interview. It's very, very rare to ever get an interview with this guy. But he posts source documents like crazy from the NSA, the CIA, everybody. I mean, it's just this huge repository of first-hand sourced documents, okay? And so he's just brilliant is the only way to talk about the guy. But I posted an interview he did. It's a very, very rare interview, and he comes up, and I can't remember all the details, but he is very anti-Snowden.
Okay.
So that would be worthwhile to take a look at that if anybody's interested in digging into that. I'm not really looking at Snowden. I'm looking at everything around Snowden, right? If you look at Snowden, he looks beautiful, right? He says all the right things at the right time, and beautiful diction, perfect. I couldn't agree more with Snowden.
The message,
right? The message, it's absolutely spot on, and I agree with everything you said. But if you back up and look around him, is this an NSA CIA little spat, or what? Are there other people involved in this? I mean. Pierre Audemar, he's got some real problems in my book. When we have a Xerox copy of his payments, to helping the CIA overthrow Ukraine, and so there's some real issues there. And the fact that they haven't released, but 1/10 of 1% or whatever of the documents they have. Why not the whole enchilada? What's holding? That's a big question.
I don't know. I don't know.
So I don't want to be their fool again. That's all I'm saying. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, and I'd like to let's see what we have left. We have about 20 minutes. Let's talk about collectivism versus individualism, and I don't know if you want to attempt. I mean, there's lots of definitions on these. I did a little bit of research. But maybe we can come up with our own definition and that's more practical and functional and useful. So I don't know if you want to take a swipe at this.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll take a swipe at it from this perspective. This is a topic of a book that I came up with a long time ago, and I think I invented a word, if that's okay, because it's coercionism. Because I thought collective. I actually registered coercion. The word coercionism came to me. Like, it's coercionism. That's what we don't want. We don't want this system that's premised on the concept of a small group of individuals having the ability to coerce everybody else. And so, because when you start talking about collectivism, which is the word that is commonly used, I think it gets a little muddy because people think of it from the perspective of sharing. Like if you go search socialism now, I swear, I know I'd searched it years ago just to see what kind of stuff came up. I feel like they have changed the algorithm at Google. If you go search socialism, there was this thing that came up that was an emblem that says sharing, or no, the radical idea that sharing is good, or something along those lines. Okay, and then these other definitions were coming up that all seemed so benign and so humanitarian. appealing to the egalitarian impulses of the people. And obviously you and I know that that's not what it is. It's always sold that way. It's always sold as it's in the public's interests, and it'll all be publicly owned. It certainly is not going to be publicly controlled. It's going to be controlled by a handful of people at the top who decide how everybody else is going to be dealt with. So that's obviously the problem with it. So now, this is the thing about all of the isms. That's where I came up with this. I'm not ready to write that book yet, but because I really think it's a core idea that I want to spend a lot of time thinking about, this concept, which is kind of embodied in the concept of individualism versus collectivism. The idea of a system of social management that is based on the zero aggression principle versus all of these other isms. And I think coercionism sums it up or creates a more accurate picture in the mind of people of what those other isms are. So whether it's fascism or communism or socialism or whatever, authoritarianism, they all are premised on the ideology of coercion. Coercionism, would be a better way to frame that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good word.
Yeah, whether I use it or not, I don't know, but it's just an issue of trying to summarize. That's what the problem is. That's what the difference is. Either we're operating under the idea that everybody has a right to do whatever they want to do, provided they are not violating the rights of somebody else. They're not stealing their property or invading their space or, in some very measurable way harming them. That, the zero aggression principle concept, the golden rule concept, whatever you want to call it, versus somehow through the magic of government, a handful of people can delegate power that they themselves do not have to a smaller group of people, and then those people can then, rampage through the world and do whatever they want and steal the money to finance it and lock people in cages who don't agree. And even though those people are nonviolent and haven't violated the rights of anybody else, it's a pretty stark contrast between those two thoughts.
Yeah, and I was thinking when I look at the word collectivism, one of the gates I passed through years ago was, trying to split out all the different isms, and you can waste your life reading about the different kinds of socialism and communism and all this, and go down to the nitty gritty and argue and waste a lot of time. But the bottom line with all these isms, there's like a common thread, and it is collectivism. And the idea behind that is you get everybody collected, right, under one ism, and then you can control that collection, right? And so I was listening to G. Edward Griffin the other day. I think it was Alex Jones. I don't know who was interviewing him, but somebody, maybe it was on YouTube, was asking him, well, what's the thing that binds all this together? Because, talking about quickly, this started years and years and years ago, even hundreds of years. These plans, what's the binding fabric, here? And he said it was an intellectual concept, it's collectivism, And so, the way I look at things is we have the collectivism, which is whatever you want to call it. It could be, nationalism, even, whatever. But, excuse me. But what I think is important is that we put the individual always first, because when I see some of the definitions of collectivism, it's like, the best for the most, what's best for the majority. And so if we ever get to that.
The greater good for the greater many.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking for. And so, but we have to maintain that, and it reminds me of the old Star Treks, they kind of push forward the idea that, the individual is important no matter what society says, okay? And so we always have to put the individual first, in my opinion, individual rights, and we have to keep that in our mind no matter what we call the ism or what we're operating under.
I agree 100%. Clearly, if you follow this concept of the greater good for the greater many, then you start getting into some really complicated issues like, okay, can I take this healthy person over here and part them out? We got a heart that'll save this person's life. We've got a pair of lungs that'll save this person's life. We've got a liver that's going to save this person's life. We've got a kidney here for 2 people.
Or selling baby parts.
Whatever it is,
Parenthood.
that's the logical end of that concept of saying it's the greater good for the greater many. Well, clearly one healthy person, if they can save the life of 5 or more people who need these body parts, I understand that people would say, oh, but that would never happen. Well, of course it would happen. They already have harvesting of organs in other countries. And
China, it's common.
right. So let's not even pretend that it can't happen. Let's look at the ideology. Okay, let's put it this way. Let's pretend that it seems unreasonable that it would happen, but if it were possible for it to happen, what would be the ideology that would make it possible? And that's the ideology. Whereas if you focus on the individual, the collective is protected. So when you focus on the collective, and you focus on the collective, the individual becomes meaningless because a handful of individuals are the ones who are going to control that system. So it's still individualism. It's just a corrupt, horrible form of individualism. It's a handful of individuals determining what's going to happen to the collective. The collective isn't going to have any power in that system. Whereas if the individual's rights are respected, then it's flipped on its head. Then that whole thing's flipped on its head in that scenario. Now everybody is protected. Let's hope.
Okay.
I said, let's hope anyway. Right. We still need. We still need to. It isn't just going to happen automatically, but there's a better chance for the individuals, at least if nothing else, to know where the lines are drawn and where violations have taken place.
Right. And, my thought when I look at politics and, the different isms and look at our Constitution, Bill of Rights, etc., and world history, I always want to put the individual first, individual rights in my mind. And that's the prism from, which I view the world is we have to have individual rights and it has to be above everything else in my mind. And, like, you don't want to be absurd, my rights end where your nose begins and all that.
Yeah.
I understand that. So I think we have an agreement on the collectivism versus individualism. Let's turn over now to who do you think is winning the info war? And what do you think if Trump becomes president and if the UK drops out of the EU? What would that mean to the New World Order's long-term agenda?
I don't know. Well, let's start with the first one. Who's winning the info war? We are. And the reason I think we're winning it is because we're gaining against them. So in that sense, we're not ahead. We don't have the mass consciousness, access to the mass consciousness that they do. But I feel that we are absolutely gaining ground. And that's the best we can do at this point. So for all of these, forever, they had an enormous amount of sway. They could immediately make 1 billion people aware of something that everybody was completely unaware of just the day before, and that was just the received reality, and there was no way to challenge it. At this point, I think we're doing great. I think in the past 20 years, with the internet, the inroads that we're making are awesome. So I'm very happy about that. As far as what's going on with the European Union, it looks like a mess to me, and I think that's good for us, don't you? I think all of that is part of what I was just talking about with who's winning the info war. I mean, this is falling apart in their face. It sure looks like it is. I don't think they're faking it.
Well, if Trump is elected, he's against the TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and which is side of the agreement. So basically, you have NAFTA, which is North America trade agreement, and stitching, the Pacific together, is TPP, and then we have the TPIP for the EU on the Atlantic side. And so they're trying to stitch all these countries together into one organization that they can control. And so if they lose Britain from the EU, I think the whole EU.
I just posted a really good article by Paul Craig Roberts on the TTIP, and also has a video of him debating. Can't remember the guy's name, O'Grady or somebody. I think he's from the Independent. But anyway, it's excellent. He picks apart what this agreement actually is, what it actually does, the propaganda that they're using to sell it, and it just isn't working as well as it used to. So I'm encouraged by that, David. I feel good about it. Yeah.
I do too. All right. On that note, let's go ahead and bring this to an end, and we'll pick it back up some other time. Where can anybody that's viewing this YouTube video, where can they go to find out more about Joseph Plummer and some of the activities?
The easiest way is to just go to joeplummer.com, and Plummer is spelled Plummer, 2 M's, no B. And so joeplummer.com, and they'll be able to, if they are interested in reading up on this system, they want to check out Tragedy and Hope 101, and they go to joeplummer.com, they'll see it right there, they'll see a big graphic of the book that they can click on. They can read it for free. And they can also read Dishonest Money. They can read Dirty Money. They can read Dirty Money, or they can read Leaving the Illusion too if they want, and any other books that I write in the near future, I'm sure will be posted there as well. The Spanish version, which we talked about at the beginning of the interview, which I'm excited about, will be there hopefully within a reasonable amount of time here. We're going to see what we can do.
All right. Joe, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, David.
All right. Thanks.